الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
السلام عليكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وسبحان الله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله محمد وعلى أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum. One of the primary goals of the khutbah is obviously to witness, to stand and demonstrate an understanding of the truth, of what is reality, and to reorient and recorrect the gaze of its congregants, of Muslims, for the week to come. Ramadan is very, very close. Another year has gone by. Time seems to go by very quickly. And it's been a while since I've given a khutbah. And truthfully, since October 7th, I wondered to myself, what do I have to offer? What is it that I can say that will be of benefit to Muslims? Those of you who know me know that I am enamored by psychology. I'm enamored by what a human being is, by behavior, by the mind. And I found myself facing a real internal conflict. What does this all matter? What does any of the things I'm enamored by matter when men, women, and children are being annihilated? When my brothers and my sisters are being annihilated day in and day out. In Palestine, in Sudan, in China, to name a few. I'm sure I'm not alone in sharing the experience that it is paralyzing. And then when one reflects on how it's paralyzing, if one is of any moral standing, they feel enraged at themselves that they're thinking about themselves. What right do I have to feel paralyzed? What do my emotions matter when people are being annihilated? And this was something that I prayed on a lot and turned to Allah a lot. Not just in terms of what am I going to say in a khutbah, but what am I going to do with my life? What is it that I can offer to the stream of life that will be beneficial to Muslims? Because it seems that right now what we need is to hear from other voices other than me who can speak on this matter and educate and organize on this matter to bring about some real change. But I also realized that the fact that I was measuring this by October 7th was indicative of my privilege. Because this is not a new issue. This, and I don't even like to call it an issue. This genocide began long before October 7th. Genocides began long before October 7th. I grew up. I was a child hearing about genocides. I was a child when the Bosnian genocide took place. When I turned to Surah Mudathir, one of the first revelations revealed to us. And I'll read the beginning of it in English. O thou, in thy solitude enfolded, arise and warn, and thy sustainers' greatness glorify, and thine inner self purify, is the beginning. And something very interesting caught my attention. Something that appears elsewhere in the Quran. In fact, it appears over and over again. Arise and warn, and thine inner self purify. The Quran, the Islamic message, the Islamic gaze is interested in both the external and the internal. It is simultaneously looking outward and looking inward. It is not telling you, first take care of yourself and then deal with the outside world. It is not telling you, deal with the external until you reach a point where you can deal with the internal. It is telling you, your external world and your internal world are one. In fact, I'll go further than that. I don't think that there is a separation between the two. I think that the internal reflects the external, and the external influences the internal. In fact, this is one of the ways that we can understand the nature of Allah better. Because Allah is a Samad. Allah is the only thing that is unchanging, eternal, free of influence. And so as many of us have been, as I reflected on what should I do? What can I do about this? And what, I think most importantly, what does Islam have to offer? Because some of the most moral voices that we have seen, especially when it comes to Palestine, are not religious voices. So what's the point of Islam? And I felt that the question itself betrayed my own shortcomings of faith. Because I realized I'm not Muslim because it offers me something. I am Muslim because I believe it's the truth. I believe in a merciful Creator, an ever-present, all-hearing, loving Creator, beyond my comprehension, who as a mercy sent prophets and sent messages to bring me to Him, to bring us to Him. A Creator that created this blessing of a life filled with magic and miracles, and made human beings vicegerents despite their nagging bad habit of becoming accustomed and habituated to the magic and the miracles and forgetting, ever in a state of forgetfulness. And most importantly, that there is a life after this one, and that life is much more real, much more everlasting, and that life is directly connected to this life. That what I do, what I say, what I see, what I hear, what I speak in this life influences my stature in the next life. And that this life, while it is a miracle, is also a struggle because of my nature. And I realized that the question of what Islam could offer me, I believe, is irrelevant. It is the truth. And it is a liberating truth. Because this life is not all there is. There is so much more, and it liberates me to do the right thing, to speak, and to act. Surah Al-Mudaththir goes on to say, "And all defilement shun, and do not through giving seek thyself to gain, but unto thy sustainer turn in patience. And when the trumpet call is sounded, that very day, be a day of anguish, not of ease, for all who deny the truth. Leave me alone to deal with whom I have created alone, and to whom I have granted resources vast, and children as witnesses, and to whose life I gave so wide a scope, and yet he greedily desires that I give yet more." The problem to me, in I don't think just the modern era, but it's human nature, is that human beings, we compartmentalize life. What I have seen a lot of growing up is when it comes to religion, there seems to be really two camps. One which says, forget the outside world. It's out of your control. Focus on finding Allah and being with Allah and preparing for the next world. Which the problem with that is that basically, by that logic, this world is meaningless. It's just a waiting room. And it's not. It's so much more. But the Islamic gaze requires that you be ruthlessly honest with yourself, that you investigate yourself in the same way that you prepare for your career. If someone only looks inward and ignores the outside world, that pursuit reinforces their selfishness. They fall deeper into selfishness because their spirituality becomes just about them and how they feel and their experience. It's divorced of what is outside, of the reality of what human beings are going through, especially if you're someone like me, born in an immense amount of privilege. And by privilege, I mean being able to have a home and being able to eat every day. Being able to control the temperature in my room so that I feel comfortable. That's privilege. Not to mention the opportunities of what I can do with my life. Just the fact that I can sit and have an internal crisis about what to do. If someone looks outward without looking inward, they will inevitably project what is inside of them onto their environment, onto people, and most importantly, onto God, onto their understanding of God. And it's not just project themselves, but project what they do not realize in themselves, what they are unconscious of. And they will do it without realizing it, because they have no sense of who they are, of their prejudices. They take for granted that their perspective is their perspective. the outward, the realizing that there is a humanity, that there are other people, the realizing and not turning away from suffering, from the suffering of other people, will teach you how to defeat your selfishness, how to no longer just be an I, but be one of many. The inward shows you what to create. Because elsewhere in the Quran, it also talks about how if you were in Pharaoh's place, you would be just like him. It seems to be the pattern across ages that there is always an oppressor and there is always an oppressed. And you might think that you will never be an oppressor. But I think history speaks differently. When you look inside, you realize the parts of yourself that are oppressive, tyrannical. And with no power, these things can go unnoticed. And they have the very famous phrase that power is all corrupting. And I think that's part of it, yes. It doesn't have to be. But human beings are in constant flight from themselves. Later on in Surah Al-Mudaththir, it says, "What then is amiss with them, that they turn away from all admonition, as though they were terrified donkeys fleeing from a lion?" And that's something that has always fascinated me. Human beings will endure an immense amount of discomfort, even protect and get defensive when the way that we're living life makes us uncomfortable. But the admonition, the word that sets the gaze at us, that says maybe you could be doing something a little bit differently, maybe you should look at this, is very threatening. And we run from it. And if you're someone who has listened through Project Illumine, the halaqas, the tafsir, you'll remember that one of the key points that shows up across surah, around through so many surahs, is that usually the barrier to true belief is not rationality, is not reason. It is not that someone listens to an argument and says, that isn't convincing to me, but it's something emotional. What is gathered and labeled as diseases of the heart. And that is a whole ocean of what those things might be, of what diseases of the heart actually are, all the different kinds. And I highly recommend going to those halaqas and watching them. They're all on YouTube. Because me paraphrasing it would do it injustice. And to sincerely ask yourself, which one of these apply to me? Because I'll be honest with you that all of them apply to me, in one way or another at different points in time. So to think of these two directions as separate, inward and outward, I believe is a delusion. And it is the most common delusion, is one that affects all of us. We compartmentalize. That's what human beings do. We like to organize things into little boxes so we can deal with it better, and that's a good thing. It's a tool. It serves us in science and everything, because that's how we learn. That's part of knowledge. But it is like any tool, it is to be used in specific scenarios. And wisdom is knowing when to use it and when to not use it. All religions except Islam, are founded on and promulgate this separateness. They either, for the most part, actually, most religions will just tell you, ignore the outside world, come here, remove yourself from temptation, remove yourself from all of the noise, isolate and find the inner heaven within you, which is not, there's truth to that. There's a place for that. But Islam says what is going on inside of you is very relevant to what is going on outside of you. And you have a responsibility to go to Pharaoh to alleviate the oppression of the oppressed, to help the orphan, to help the refugee, to free people from bondage. And what is necessary for you to do that is to purify the inner self. The problem is that when you only look at the inward, when you treat your inward reality as separate, it cements you in misguidance. It cements you in selfishness, because the two influence each other. In the next khutbah, I'll talk a little bit more about this and what exactly, and you'll understand why, do I think we need to discuss and rethink what we classify as a religion. Ask Allah for forgiveness. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa subhanallah al-Ali al-Azim walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa ala ashab Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the last khutbah, at the end of the last khutbah, my father spoke about hadith. The way he paraphrased the hadith was, you will be ruled by those who fit your sense of morality. As you are, you will be ruled. And I think, I can only speak for myself, but there is a very big disconnect between what I see in the outside world and how I view myself. The ways in which I contribute to the injustice of this country are numerous. And only if I can become honest about something can I do something about it. My definition of religion is different from most people. I think that it is a system of belief, which everyone I think probably agrees with, and servitude. It is what you serve. In verse 56 of Surah Al-Dhariyat, it says the human being was made for service. Usually, liya'budun is translated as worship, but it doesn't say lis-salah. It doesn't say for prayer. And a lot of translations will say worshiping me, Allah. But me is not actually in the Arabic. The way I interpret this verse is it is a statement on the nature of what a human being is and what jinn are. You cannot escape the reality that you will serve something. By your very nature. Because you are full of fear. And by being full of fear, what I mean is you are full of need. Always need something. There is always something that I'm striving to get. And this, we discussed this a lot in the tafsir halaqas, Project Illumin, that this takes on a lot of different manifestations. But what is repeated throughout the Quran is that you always are seeking to get something. So I believe that every human being who claims to not have a religion or to not be very religious, I look at that very similarly to when people say, I don't want to be political. I'm sorry, but politics are inescapable. Your existence is political, whether you like it or not. All it does is betray that you're extremely privileged and that you're above the decisions being made by nations, that you're not being affected. All it does is betray your selfishness. And it's okay, because we're all selfish. It's fine. The point is not to shame anybody, but the point is, what I am interested in is finding a way out, finding a way beyond, learning and improving. Because the other side of the inward reality and the outward reality being one, of you not being separate from your environment and the people around you, is that when they succeed, you will succeed. When they feel better, you will feel better. They are not mutually exclusive because they're the same thing. And that truly, one of the veils that's placed in this life is that I'm separate from you. There's a lot of new age spirituality that, all the oneness of everything, and it's true. But the way that it is used, and it really, to me, shows the necessity for revelation. It shows the necessity for Islam. Because the Quran is miraculous. It tells you exactly how to do this. Everything that you could think of is in that book. So a religion is a philosophy of action. And some choose them consciously, others unconsciously. It can be a political party, a culture, precedent, nationality. All contribute to the construction of what your religion is, of what defines you. Race. You can follow the religion of the dollar. You can follow the religion of being a victim. You can follow the religion of comfort, of vacations, of capitalism. And simultaneously, you could hate capitalism. All of these things, not one of them. Simply put, a religion is what you define yourself against. And what you define yourself against, what defines you, is your God. And Islam is an invitation, instructions to how to define yourself with God. It is the ground. Religion is the ground that you stand on, and you can recognize it because when it is shook, you become shook. And it requires work to figure out what this is. And by work, I mean pen to paper, taking inventory, investigating, looking at your behaviors like a scientist to figure out what this is. I don't mean sitting and ruminating about what you are, because that's often just mental gymnastics to convince yourself that you're correct. So if your religion is what you define yourself against, it is your foundation, it is what I get my sense of self from, Aren't I defining myself by something external of me? And if I'm defining myself by something external of me, how come I believe that these two things are separate? They're one and the same. This is why Allah in the Quran tells us to be careful of what we eat, what we look at, be careful of what we say, be careful of who we hear, be careful of who we're around, be careful of the jobs that we take. Because it all makes up who I am. That's the true choice. I choose what I ingest. I choose who I am around. I choose what I do. I don't get to do whatever I want and then say, well, I still have freedom of choice. Yeah, you do, and you're choosing through your behavior. These things make you. Surah At-Takathur, which I don't know why has been on my mind a lot the last few months. Seems so relevant that I don't have it in front of me, but essentially that you are always wanting for more. You are striving for more and more until you reach the grave. And I understand that. There is always something in my life that I've convinced myself that once I get it, everything will be okay. This is normal. This is human. I don't know if I can defeat that feeling. But guess what? I don't think it matters. Because my emotions and my feelings are just one part of existence. They don't have to change. But if I can recognize and intervene with that in myself, that I will always keep striving for more. I will always be thirsting for another thing. And even if I get it, it will not be enough. I will get bored of it. I will get used to it. And I no longer will feel the sense of fulfillment. And I think that it is so interesting that while my society has raised me to believe, well, you need to eat, you need to take care of yourself. You need a job, you need to take care of yourself. Maybe all of these things are true. But in my religion, it has Ramadan. It has fasting. It has giving. It has instructions doing the exact opposite. And I think all of you would agree that is in those moments where I'm giving. It is in those moments where I'm more concerned for the needs for others that I feel most alive. And feeling most alive is really I think it's actually feeling most connected to God. And so, there's two things that I'll finish on. One, in the halaqah on Surah Al-Mudaththir, and in other halaqas as well, there's a lot, other sources are brought in. And a lot of times, what's the Sufi, not hipster Sufism, but classical Sufism, the study of the self. Because it was a science. They classified these things. It wasn't just hawa and how things feel. And 3 humors are offered. Attitudinal matrices in a self that exist. And I'd like to share those. And it's actually 9, but 3 are discussed in this halaqah. That one is the covetous self, takathur, the one that is always looking for more. Is this in balance? Am I aware of this? The next one is the rageful and angry self. Am I able to accept? Am I trying to impart my own idea of how life should go? It imprint that, which is arrogance. And the dishonest and hiding self, the duplicitous self. Am I different people? Am I different people to different people? Do I mold according to what I think other people want or will accept? Which is so interesting that our political system is basically based on that, on someone's ability to appear perfect. And the other thing is, as Ramadan comes, I'm thinking, what is it that I want to refocus myself on? Who am I going to give to? How am I going to make this Ramadan not about me, but about other people? And that's a question that I think all of us should start asking ourselves now, because time goes by very quickly. And every Ramadan goes by extremely quickly. How am I going to go into this new year? How am I going to contribute to the lifting of the veil in myself that prevents me from seeing the magic and the blessing of life? To recognize that the trees are a miracle, that I am a miracle, the fact that I have a body that is constantly striving and constantly working in a perfect harmony to keep myself going, to deliver enjoyment to myself. How am I going to realize that miracles are all around me and that blessings are all around me? And I would argue that the path to that is in realizing and doing the opposite of takathur, of giving, of stopping the incessant need for more money, more food, more entertainment, more comfort, more admiration, more validation, more prestige, more security that everything will work out the way that I want it to work out. And instead, focus on giving those things to other people, especially the refugee and especially the orphan. And there are ample, unfortunately, heartbreaking amount of people that need our help right now. Allah forgive our sins, guide us on the straight path, help me to realize what I should do with myself. Help me to realize your will and to defeat the Pharaoh within me. Help me to become an instrument of your will and your peace. Help me to bring love. Help me to forgive. Help me to know true faith. Ya Allah, grant that I seek to comfort rather than to be comforted, and to understand rather than to be understood. Help me to not focus so much on my desires, so that I may worship you better. Ya Allah, please help the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, the people of Sudan, the people of Uyghurs. Help me to help the unhoused, the refugee, and those suffering all around the world. Wa aqimus salah.